Before sharing this finance update, I'd love to start by just saying that almost everything that we do at Trent is only possible because so many of you have committed to give generously to the work and the ministry of the church. And we are so grateful to those of you who invest financially in this way. So let's now take a look at how your investment in God's work here has been used. Starting with the headlines before we get into any detail. The church's financial year runs from July to June, so the charts that I'm about to show you represent the situation in the 12 months up to the 30th of June 2024. Now, you may remember that in last year's Vision Talk, I explained that we were in and expected to remain for some time in a challenging financial climate, principally due to rising utility prices, general inflation and increases to things like the real living wage. And consequently, our senior leadership team, finance team and the trustees had anticipated and we had budgeted for a deficit during the 23-24 financial year. In other words, we expected that our outgoings would exceed our income and require us to use some reserves to balance that shortfall out. And so we worked hard with our teams to identify where we could tighten our belts. And the bottom line is that our deficit for the year was substantially less than we anticipated due to increases in giving, good performance from our trading team and careful management of ministry budgets. So basically, it was a challenging financial year, but we ultimately had reasons to feel positive at the end of it. So let's take a look at that in a bit more detail. And then at the end, I'll touch very briefly on how things are going at the time of this recording, which is 7 months into the new financial year. So first, let's have a look at the income breakdown. The total amount which came in this past year was just under £2.68 million. 72% of that was regular giving, which came in primarily through the bank by standing order. And as you can see, most of our income comes in this way. If you are able to give regularly, it really helps us with budgeting and planning. Now, 4% there is other giving, and this includes one-off gifts that come through the bank, through churchery and through the offering baskets on a Sunday. Another 16% is gift aid. That's tax that we're able to reclaim from the inland revenue on most of what was given. And then 6% is the profit that came in from a great performance from our trading activities that is gifted to the church. And that includes external organisations using the warehouse for conferences, our bar and Whitebird coffee shop. And then 2% there is other income, which is predominantly interest on our savings. It's encouraging, I think, that regular giving grew by 3% during that year, with many church members continuing to join us in giving online. We also saw an increase in the amount of gift aid we were able to reclaim. So thank you to those of you who responded when we wrote to you about this. It's been a huge help. And overall, our income for the church, as a result of all of that, in 23-24 was up 6% compared to the previous year. That's encouraging. So let's take a look at how that money was used, including what we gave away. We spent just under £2.77 million. Despite a lot of care being taken to keep expenditure down, as I mentioned, there were certain factors like the cost of utilities, inflation had meant that this was still 4% more than the previous year. The figures for each of these groups include the costs of staff dedicated to that area and the direct costs of making these ministries happen. Spread across each of these groups proportionately are general costs such as finance, IT and admin, and the costs of upgrading or enhancing facilities and equipment. So how that breaks down, 22% of our total income is what we call set apart. That's money that is to be given away or spent on activities and things that benefit those outside our church. Now, because of the slight disparity between our income and expenditure, this actually amounts to 21% of our total expenditure. Now, set apart, it includes our compassion ministries, overseas mission, blessing the community, and other outward-looking areas. It includes the financial gifts that we make to other churches, charities, and needs, and it also includes our contribution to the National Vineyard movement. Next, 27% of our expenditure was related to our facilities, including areas like upgrading and maintaining all of our buildings, plus our mortgage and utilities costs. Then another 27% is everything that we spend on making our Sunday services happen: worship, sound, media, kids, youth, and refreshments. And then 20% you can see is spent on our midweek ministries, including areas like small groups, pastoral care, kids and youth activities, marriage and family events and young adults. And then 5% of expenditure is on training and equipping, such as discipleship courses and investing in the development of leaders. So you might have spotted that we spent £93,000, about 4% more than came in. As I mentioned before, we had anticipated that the church would be in a deficit position. In fact, the approved budget was for a £200,000 deficit. So actually to come in with a £93,000 deficit, although not ideal, was actually an encouraging outcome. The goal, of course, is to get back to a balanced budget. And so thanks to your ongoing generosity and the hard work of the team and trustees, we are continuing to move in that direction. So that's the picture looking at the last financial year up until June 2024, but things never stay still. So on to this financial year ending in June 2025. Let's look at where we are at the time of this recording. Now, ahead of this year, the finance team, SLT and the trustees agreed that we need to work back towards a balanced budget at a realistic and healthy pace, making savings where we can, whilst also continuing to invest in church activity. And so we worked hard with our teams to identify where we can tighten our belts, where we can reorganise one or two areas to be more efficient. And we also took some difficult decisions. And largely thanks to that work that was done, we are on track to show a much improved financial position for this year. Current forecasts anticipate a smaller deficit position, less than £50,000, which is in line with the budget that we set and much closer to the break-even position that we want to get back to as we look towards the 25-26 year that's ahead of us. So where we are, we remain cautiously optimistic as we continue on that journey. All that said, cautious optimism is probably the right wording, as we still have financial challenges ahead. Whilst inflation has come down over the last 12 months, I think we're all watching and waiting to see what happens in the wider economy at the moment, which obviously affects all of us in different ways. One increased cost that we know is coming our way is the impact of the change in the employers' national insurance rates that will kick in later this year, and that we know that's going to be a significant sum for us. And if I was to look a little further ahead, I'd suggest that sadly that's not the end of the challenges that we face. So please do keep the financial situation of the church in your prayers. We are working on the next steps with the Compassion Building, which, as many of you know, has some significant issues, and we are anticipating increased maintenance costs to keep up for the upkeep of our buildings in the coming years. So in summary, really, we are on track with our plan to get back to a break-even budget, but we're not out of the woods yet. There are further financial challenges ahead of us that we have already identified and we are working on. In light of all this, I want to say that we remain so grateful to those of you who are committed to giving regularly to the church. We continue to work with the team to maximise the impact of our expenditure, and of course we have the reassurance of the reserves that have been built up over many years. Thank you, God, for providing those. If you would consider this to be your church and you're not currently financially giving, maybe you think we have plenty of resources here. I hope this kind of summary clarifies that isn't the situation. And I would seriously encourage you to ask the Lord whether He wants you to start in giving financially and joining with those of us who are already investing in God's kingdom in this way. If you're currently giving, but it's been a while since you reviewed your giving, please do take some time to review that and consider it. And finally, we just want to mention gift aid. If you are a UK taxpayer, we are more than likely able to claim an additional 25 pence from the government on every pound that you give and harness that money for kingdom activity. But we can't do that if you don't give us first your consent to do so. So please do if you haven't and if you're able. You'll find all the details on how to do all of this at trentv.org/give. And if you do make any changes, it would be helpful if you could email giving@trentvineyard.org to let the finance team know. If you've got any questions about the finances, you're very welcome to ask any of our amazing trustees. The website page has their details on them. You can find that at trentv.org/trustees. Or if you forget that, go to the bottom of the website's homepage, click on Affiliation and Accountability, and there's a contact email, and you can also see a photo and a brief bio for each of our trustees.